Hello, everyone. This is Political Chit Chat, and I'm your host, Gonzalo Duran. Today's honored guest is James Washington Ward, running for City Council District 12 in the Bronx. James, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Gonzalo.
So, James, for the audience that may not know who you are, could you please give us a little bit about your background?
And quick about my background. Born and raised in the Bronx, and worked, did childcare for a while, in and out of Kips Bay. Then did military programs for a while, and then I've done retail for most of my life, and now I'm hitting the political trail. It's time for the people, the everyday, ordinary person, to step up and stand up for everybody and take our government back.
Now, your background where you've lived, is it mostly the Bronx or are you?
I lived mostly the Bronx. I did a few years out in Pennsylvania, but that's where I went to college and started my family and all. But then I came back home.
Okay, and that's a nice roundup and change of pace when people want to get out of the city. Did you come back because you prefer the city life or what was it?
I just ran into some rough times and I had to come back and regroup.
Okay, fair enough. But I know you left out a big part. I see how humble you're being right now. A lot of we've known each other for a while through the nonprofit sector, working with. You mentioned the cadets. That's something to do with junior ROTC cadets, volunteering with veterans, the youth, programs like multiple programs, Christmas events down to book drives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, is there a specific, let's say, issue that really plagues upon what you like to work on?
No, I think giving back to the community and just being an overall help, just generalized help, and no matter what you can do, every little bit helps.
And and I know I've seen the progress that you've made in your community, the smiles that you put in the kids' faces, and not only that, but the impact that you've made. So when you walked in to, let's say, politics now, you're not walking in without a blank resume. You have quite a big number of activities you've done. You've been in the newspapers, you've been on TV, you've done countless events. So once again, I can understand you being humble today, but I want to try to knock out some of these things that will put you in the presence of the people so they can understand why you're running for city council. So
Right.
let's get into that right now. Why are you running for city council?
I feel like the guard has to be changed. We're still in old school, old-minded politics. Personally, and this is my personal feelings, that a lot of politicians nowadays are being brought or they're handed different jobs, and they're not suitable for the job they're doing. Somehow, miraculously, they're handed another high-figured paying job and still helping out with the same decisions. And our communities are going nowhere. We do see high-rise buildings being developed, but these corporations and these developers are coming in and promising our neighborhoods certain things that they're delivering on, but they're not delivering on for us. So you're developing our neighborhoods to push us out.
I want to backtrack a little bit. You had mentioned that you've seen politicians basically walking into these positions. Now, I'm not going to go direct like we're saying something like that, but I do see a trend in a lot of different factors. Let's say, for example, I hit on the 17 City Council District a lot because I know that area a lot more than any other. City Council District 17, 2 years ago, for that election cycle, there's like maybe 180,000 individuals that are living there. 80,000 are registered, 50,000, 60,000 are registered Democrats, and they normally predominantly win in those, in let's say majority of the Bronx. But looking at the numbers, they win by 5% of their voting registered voters. So 95% are not voting.
Right.
So not only are they walking into $100,000 job, they have control over our legal system, but there's really no competition there. And
I wouldn't. Well, you're right. There really is no competition, but I will also say, we as a people, we're not out there. I want to say keeping people up to date with politics. Yeah, we have social media and the news and everything else, but these elections for city council, borough president, so forth and so on, the smaller elections tend to get overlooked and unnoticed because it's almost has been fed to the people as the only important election there is a presidential election. And, what we tend to forget is we can elect judges. And we complain that judges aren't doing enough, or the judges don't do this. We have the power to elect the judge into that seat.
yes, and that's a very powerful statement. I know I've noticed, in my background with a little bit of politics, that people really only come in for the big races, especially, this particular year we have a mayoral race, and, in the news you have Mandami and Adams and Cuomo and Silva. They're everywhere, but nobody's talking about the lower level races,
Right.
which is not even that lower level. We're talking about city council that controls, billions of dollars, and we're just letting it slip by right now. So with that being said, let's start talking about some of your politics, your platforms that you're coming at. Any particular one you want to start out with?
I'm really concerned about the education system and the aftercare of kids when they're coming out of school. I kind of feel like there should be one curriculum, amongst private schools, charter schools, and public schools. Now, back in the day, we had this thing of No Child Left Behind, but if private schools aren't accelerating, and then now we have public schools falling behind, and kids are being too rowdy or whatever have you, so that led us into these privately owned charter schools. And now charter schools are accelerating, but public schools still hasn't accelerated. We need to figure out, where's the breakdown? Why can't we have an equal education no matter what your parents' pockets look like? What if your parents can't afford to send you to private school? That doesn't make you lesser. That doesn't mean you can't get a better education, because we all know that there's a lot of progress that has come out of public schools. There's a lot of progress that's come out of private schools, and vice versa. But I want to see one curriculum throughout all three, and let's push all of our kids, whether you can afford to send them to private school or you can afford to have them in public school.
You hit some really good topics. I know recently there was an increase in positivity with the charter schools for the Bronx specifically. I know that one of the schools in New York was one of the top rated in the state. And then there was individual students. I think there was like 2 students that were rated like top students in, like, I don't remember how far, but I think they were like a national thing that they numbered at. And I'm like, those are great things to hear.
Right.
But we also hear the negativity of it. Like, I think we're at, I don't quote me on this number. It's either 32 or 42,000. I think it's 42,000 per child per child. So the capital on that's crazy. And where does the money go? There's a lot of questions on that. I've always felt that we have too many administrators. But what do you do when you have a large amount of educators with like master's degrees and you don't know where to put them? You got to make those jobs.
It's always going to be a hard choice. But you got to go into the choice knowing, God bless my mother. She taught for 30 plus years for the Board of Education, from school to school to school to school. And taking that job, she knew that's not a 6-figure job that she's taking. So I've seen it go on strike or whatever have you. But, the little side conversation is, yes, we deserve more money, but we know this isn't a high paying position to begin with. So who are we really hurting if we're not in the schools teaching? And that's where, the mind frame comes from is you almost never hear private schools going on strike. Almost. I've heard every once, but almost never. They almost never go on strike. Charter schools are too new. I heard them threaten maybe once or twice.
Well, I mean, I've always seen that the reason why we've moved away from, and this is not only one reason, but this is a reason that we've moved away from the public school is because the tenureship, it's hard to fire a teacher. So, the charter schools were like an came out of that, grew out of that situation. And, the private school, if you're more affluent, then you have an opportunity to get away from the crowded schools and all the issues that are going out there. I went to public school. I think I did pretty good. I don't know if that's the right word right there.
I look at it as a youth, elementary school, I went to Catholic school. Right there on the Grand Concourse, St. Philip Neri. High school, I went to Samuel Gompers, which at the time was a vocational high school, which now I'm finding out that New York doesn't have too many more vocational high schools, which is another thing that, when I get elected, I want to look at because we need to be teaching our children a trade. We can't wait for them to go to college to find a trade when half of us adults now are putting in applications and they're asking for 2 years of college plus 4 years of experience. Where are they going to get the experience from if they haven't learned it already? So we need to bring back trades in high schools as well. And, again, that's mine. But back to my story, is what I've noticed is that when I left elementary school, I was about 2 grade levels above my entry-level classmates in high school. And then later on in life, my daughter goes to public school because of obviously financial situations. And each year I have her teacher pull me aside and tell me and her mother, you need to put your child in a private school. This curriculum isn't challenging enough for her. So if the curriculum isn't challenging enough for a child that the teacher is telling me that my child needs to be put in a different school, there's a problem across the board. And that's what I want to dig deep into, and I want to figure out what can we do to bring solidarity, one curriculum amongst the schools.
Gotcha. So what's another platform that you'd like to talk about?
The after-school programs. I feel we're losing our kids to the streets. It's going to correlate straight into gun violence. A lot of these gun violence, we got a lot of teenagers out there using guns, shooting guns, dying from guns, where they could be in an after-school program learning to play basketball or volunteering their hours tutoring the little kids or just having something to do and not being in the street. And again, that's something we have to look into is we're sending all this money out into these schools, but where's the money going? Where's the budgets? Because you and I growing up, we had places to go to until about 6, 7 o'clock. Nowadays, mom and dad is getting off at 5 o'clock. The program is ending at 4:45, 5 o'clock. Mom and dad is in the other side of the borough or in another borough, and they have to try to make it back. And now you're putting stress on the family. We don't want to stress the family. We are supposed to be a government for the people. So I'm not saying make it easy on everybody, but we have to start eliminating a lot of the stress because a lot of the stress is turning into the violence in the streets.
Yeah, I see your point. I've been really more hard on regarding there is opportunities out there, but it's not what the people want to. And I think I mean, on a personal thing, I think people need to start changing their mindsets. You know, it's not cool to go to the library, but guess what? The library is open. There's art programs that are after school, but they're maybe not the athletic or the, I guess, the spotlight programs that are out there. And then sometimes, we have to work towards getting these things for us to be placed into them as well
Right.
nowadays. And those are hard. I'm for homework for kids, but when does a homework become a test at home and then you have to come and get graded when you bring it back in, and then the stress on that, and I agree, finding that balance, it's a hard thing. And I remember, for me, I was an overachiever in high school. So I graduated with, above average credits. I did okay with the grades, but I focused more on activities. I had a job, did volunteer work, took college courses and stuff like that. So once again, I think there are opportunities out there, but I think, we don't want to do them, or, those,
Well,
some of
my-
them don't want to do it.
My motto's always change starts with us. So like you said, some people have to change their mindset. Others, the system has to change because they may be in the right mindset and they just hitting roadblock after roadblock. Unfortunately, we have single parents out there. What do we tell a single mother who, all right, yeah, you hit your roadblock, you had your hiccup, your blessing. You know what I'm saying? You did what you did. Now you're getting your life together, but you keep losing jobs because you have to worry about childcare. What kind of help do you have out there?
Yeah, you're
by
right.
yourself.
You're right. And
You know?
how do we find, or how do we get back to a position where just one job can pay for the rent, the food, the clothing, and all those things, and not have to have two or three jobs to cover all those
That
expenses?
ties into
know?
your housing, where yes, these developers are developing, but let's start making these apartments more affordable. You got 150 units, and as I recall, the breakdown is a handful is supposed to go to a lottery program, another handful are the landlord's choice, and then another handful is supposed to be housing.
Yeah. I'm assuming what you're referring to is there's a percentage breakdown for affordable housing, and developers wanting to build now, that they have to give like some places like a 70-30 or 80-40 split or something like that.
Right.
And, but even in those situations is because the AMI for, the area medium income, would be for like say a single bedroom house or apartment would be maybe like 90,000 or 80,000.
Right.
When in the Bronx, the medium income is like 34,000,
And-
45,000.
Yes, and I can tell you from experience where I put in and I thought I was lucky because I won the lottery. I was like, oh, looked at my daughter and was like, hey, we about to get our own spot, let's go. And when I got the paperwork, they said I won the lottery for a studio apartment for me and my daughter at $22.50 a month across the street from Gun Hill Projects.
Wow. See, if you're gonna win the lottery, I don't think that's
Which is, for people that don't know what a Gun Hill Project is, hopefully you know where Vanna Childs High School is, or Gun Hill Road. All right, so, and I asked the people, my application has me and a female child on there. How are you giving me a studio apartment? And I said, you see my income where I'm only making $40,000 a year. How am I supposed to afford $22.50 along with expenses for me and my child, and all the bills are supposed to go on my name as well? Oh, well, we only look at, and this is where we have to go in and really look at, like you said, the AMI and a whole bunch of other situations, because if we're going to call it affordable housing, then let's stop looking at the gross and start looking at the net and see what people can actually afford to live in. You know, if you can't afford a luxury high-rise apartment, why do we have developers coming in and building luxury high-rise apartments?
Well, I think in the end of the day, I think we know why that's happening. You know, gentrification, trying to kick us out, and then times inflation, and there's so many things. The scattered numbers of apartments, people monopolizing on the retail, the real estate. Excuse me, the real estate, and it's a difficult thing. Is a elected official supposed to go in, wave a wand, and get it all fixed? No,
No.
it's a community thing. It's the people having the right mindset and trying to get these things done. But it has to start somewhere. For me, my thing is the buck has to start and stop with the first line for the person, and then the next one has to do their part to make that difference. But it's not an easy thing, you have a challenge ahead of you. Where if you do win, you're going to have to face those problems.
Right, right. And I want everybody to know that if you in your heart know that you deserve better, then you have to change yourself to be better. And when I say that is, when you change yourself to be better, that means you're going to change your neighborhood to be better. I have a mantra called MONSA, MONSA. Make my neighborhood safe again. That means sometimes the older gentlemen, we're going to have to tell some of these knuckleheads in these streets, hey, get off the train like that. Come down. Too many times, and I understand it, nobody wants retaliation, nobody wants to get into an altercation, but sooner or later you have to stand up for yourself and your neighborhood. Because if you don't stand up for yourself in your neighborhood, the same things are going to happen and changes are going to happen. If you wouldn't let nobody come into your house and put you in the tub and let them sleep in your bed, same thing with your building. Don't let nobody come in your house and dirty your hallways, especially the people that don't live there. If you ain't going to let nobody piss in your corner of your living room, don't let nobody piss in your elevators or your staircases. If you want change, you have to change yourself. And then in changing yourself means standing up and having those hard conversations with the people in your neighborhood that are not changing, that think it's okay to throw garbage and food out their windows, that think it's all right to be up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning shooting dice under somebody's window, and that poor person has to go to work. Just things like that we, as a people, we start with the small things. Respect is one of them. Start there, and then we can continue to change. And then as we change, we can make our neighborhood safe. We can help with this gun violence. And then if I'm elected, I can do my job and help you with any questions and anything that you have, and I can go right to the floor with it and say, this neighborhood, this district is calling for this. What can we do to fix this?
And you hit a lot of topics that fall into the quality of a life situation, and some of those things you would think it would be easy to fix, but obviously the way our system is right now, it's not. It's not. If you see somebody smoking weed or playing dice, you should be able to go through 311, but it's not happening. The police comes, they don't. If they even do come, they don't really do anything, and then it's a circle of things that we have to deal with. But for right now, if you could do me a favor, look in the camera and tell them how they can reach you if they want to help you or in your process.
Yes, go to my website, jamesforthebronx.com. Or you can reach me on Instagram at James_WWARD. Send me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
James, real quick, this is your first time running for a legislative position. I know you are a district leader for the
District 83, yes.
District 83. You're a district leader there, so you've been in politics and you've done you know, political things in your career, but running for legislative office, can you real quickly, briefly tell, let's say, somebody who's maybe new or maybe planning to come in, what to expect?
A lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. Um, you coming in here, just come in here with a plan to change and stay focused. There's going to be a lot of curveballs thrown at you, but you got to stay focused and stay, guns down and try to, as best as possible, to get a great circle around you and a circle that you can trust.
That's well put. I appreciate you doing that. With the this election going on, I recently penned an article. I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember the name right now, but it's something where the theme of it is that you know fixing your mental health during this process is just as important as the policies that you're making, and because the stress of running for office, there's no payment in it. It's not there's no money in it.
No.
So it's something to think about for those that are out there that are thinking about doing
Especially if you're brand new to the game and you don't have the corporate or the financial backing. So there's going to be a lot that you're going to see your competitors be able to do that you won't be able to do. And don't let that deter you. Don't let that deter you. Just look at it biblically. They had swords and spears, and David walked in there with a rock and a slingshot. So you got to use what you got to use.
All right. Well, thank you, James. I appreciate that. Once again, this is Political Chit Chat. I'm your host, Gonzalo Duran. This is James Washington Ward, running for City Council District 12 in the Bronx. For those that are interested and would like to be on the show, feel free to email me at gonzalodurannyc@gmail.com. And to get to know me better, feel free to check out my social media at Gonzalo Duran NYC. Until then, and as always, God bless you and God bless America.